but you actually have to tell me how it works that the Pakicetus through random mutation becomes a whale. Can you do that for me?
Yes. It's a combination of random mutation and selection pressure.
You just simply said random mutation with environment pressure produces this thing. I ask you, how does random mutation actually produce this effect? And you know what your answer was? Random mutation produces the effect.
Yes,
Yes.
because this is demonstrated in reality.
How?
The development of ring species, for instance. If you've got a quadruped, gradually elongating and making its tail larger, making it a more efficient swimmer.
How?
That provides. How do genes
look, dude, look. Let me ask you a question.
Sorry, no.
Let me ask you a question.
Hold on one sec.
I'm answering your question.
Dude, you're just saying things grow.
What I want to do is just, okay.
Do Komodo dragons have bigger tails than other lizards? Yes, they do. So evolution is clearly capable.
So your argument is Komodo dragons have longer tails than other lizards, therefore they evolved from something what? Not a lizard? Or I don't understand. What's your claim here?
No, they evolved from things with smaller tails. We can look at the earliest reptiles. They have smaller tails.
Cool. How?
They evolved to have bigger tails. Similarly, we can see in the spectrum of lizards that they have different tail geometries. So the idea of evolution producing different tail geometries, different limb geometries, different lung geometries, that's entirely consistent with the observable data that we have.
So the question is whether or not the mechanism you're saying produces longer tails or shorter tails can produce a long line of changes where the lizard is no longer, the future lizard is no longer itself, right?
So if you track back far enough, you can find the earliest examples of something that's in a clade.
I understand.
But that doesn't mean I can do without your interpolations while I'm speaking, but thank you.
Calm down.
And if you continue doing this, I'll just talk for longer. So this is a classic misunderstanding and straw man of evolution that somehow an insect will evolve into a non-insect.
I didn't say that.
No, if you're an insect, you're going to remain an insect forever.
Cool.
That is the evolutionary model. All of your descendants will be insects. Similarly, anything that is a descendant of a whale will remain a whale forever. But going back in time, they weren't always whales. They didn't have.
That's a contradiction. That's a contradiction.
No, it isn't. And I'm still talking.
Why you talk so much? Let me talk.
At one point,
fuck, dude.
Tony,
filibustering, man.
Keep it as quick as possible.
Yes, and if he keeps interrupting me, I'll keep talking. I don't
Tony,
take well to interrupt.
You're not the moderator.
If you want me to stop talking,
hold on one second.
If you want me to be concise,
all right, Jimbob.
you've got to stop.
Unbelievable, man.
Jimbob, I need you to also let me just moderate right now, please.
Yeah, please. If the Pakicetus is a wolf-like land animal, wolf-sized land animal, right? And in 15 million years, it becomes a whale, not it literally, Tony. That's a claim. How did you determine mechanistically that occurred, please?
Okay. So we know the mechanism by which it occurred, right?
How?
We know that it's so you are denying that we can see in existing animals that genetic adaptation does occur.
Well, no, genetic adaptation, what you call in existing animals, if you're talking about adaptation, what you're pointing to is genetic code or genetic information that's informing a behavior that's well within already existing. Now, you're claiming something else. You're claiming that random mutation in one clade produces some sort of effect that then creates a diversion from that clade. You're gonna have to tell me mechanistically how random mutations, right, produce an effect that leads to a whale existing that's downstream from a wolf-like land animal. That's what you have to do.
Do you not understand that genetic drift can occur, that the characteristics
that's your claim.
Animals, it's observed that there's a salamander in California that is diverging from where you've got a branching away from original an original population, and you've got the two ends that can no longer interbreed.
Okay.
So,
Tony, the problem is if you observe a bunch of things with finches and there's some epiphenomenal change in their traits, behaviors, beaks, claw sizes, tail sizes, feather sizes, color, etc., you're actually still looking within a universal called finches, right? Your claim, the thing I'm asking for evidence for, is that the finch, in this case, is stand-in for the Pakicetus. The finch, do you ever see any adaptation in the finch that would lead you to believe that over millions of years, 15 million, let's say, will turn into not a finch and something completely not a finch?
we've already been over this. That can't happen.
If the Pakicetus dies as a Pakicetus, and whatever subclade, subcategory of the Pakicetus, they also die as a Pakicetus, right? What I'm asking for, mechanistically speaking, I don't want a story that it happened. I want you to tell me how it's the case that a clade, starting as one thing and dying as one thing, how does a clade create a pathway to something it's not?
That is, again, such an idiotic question to even ask.
When I say a Pakicetus, right, the population has some random mutation that results in a divergence from the Pakicetus to something that's similar to it, and then that similar Pakicetus diverges and creates something similar to the previous one. You're saying that this succession leads to eventually a whale. Now, I asked you, how do you know this, right? It's an assumption, and you say, we observe it. Look at the flies that don't change into other things.
Yes. Just like a Pakicetus, as we have established 3 times now, does not evolve into another
That's right.
thing.
Thank you.
It develops into a descendant of a Pakicetus.
Mm-hmm. And then a whale, right?
So and eventually a whale.
How?
Yes. Again, through genetic mutation.
How, though?
James, at this point, this debate is over. Either the audience accepts.
Rage quit.
Okay.
No, the debate is pointless.
If I can just,
what he wants,
forgive me,
no,
Tony.
I'm
You're
serious.
such a baby.
What he wants. I've answered this question multiple times. He just refuses to accept the validity of the answer and then goes back to his talking point as though he's argued anything. This is pointless. This is literally a waste of my time.
Stop crying, man.
What I want to do.
The liver, as we know, the liver, peculiar to vertebrates, serves a very specific function. It processes toxins. Now, do you hold, Tony, that evolution also produced through random mutation a functioning liver with a hyper-specialized task in the body? Do you believe that?
Yes.
Okay. So if I asked you, how does random mutation inside of an organism that doesn't have a liver, how does random mutation produce a highly specialized thing like a liver?
So this is a I'm going to answer indirectly here. So let's look at the development of something like the eye. You're looking at the finished product. And you're saying, how did you get something so complicated? But we can look back through existing organisms and we can see that there are the same structures in various stages of development. So we know that a non-fully functional liver, a slightly simpler version of the liver, still provides an evolutionary advantage and still functions. And we can see even simpler versions in simpler life forms of waste disposal and waste processing procedures. We can see the spectrum of how these things developed in the existing animal population.
Okay.
So the claim that just because a fully formed liver has to go through all of these intermediate steps. We can see each of the intermediate steps, and we can see that that at each step, that population derives benefit from its version of the waste disposal mechanism.
Okay. So the answer you gave, you moved over to an eye. Interesting. You said the eye, what we're looking at is a fully developed eye. Well, under the evolutionary view, you actually couldn't know it was fully developed because it could still be evolving to not be an eye through some random mutation. The other problem you have is I asked you how you develop a liver from random mutation, and what you did is you went back in time and granted yourself a type of proto-liver. How does random mutation produce the proto-liver then? Well, that's the next question.
Okay. This is perhaps best answered with a practical example. If you go to a color screen and you see a color spectrum from yellow to red, and you can step along the spectrum from yellow to red. Yellow to orange, say. When along that have you transitioned from yellow to orange? Is there a particular point?
Random mutation produces the beginning, even the beginning of a protoliver. How does it mechanically do that?
It does. So you understand that there are chemical processes within a living organism, right?
Yes, but not all. They weren't always there, right?
In order to be alive, you have to have chemical processes.
Okay, so not all chemical processes evolved. You had to start with just life, or what?
So evolution is not about abiogenesis. If you want to debate abiogenesis,
I didn't say that.
That's a different debate.
I didn't say that.
So, no, but you're being obstructive and you're interrupting me again.
Stop crying.
In order to try and derail my explanation. There are chemical processes inside organisms. Some of the chemical byproducts of these processes are harmful and need to be excreted. The organisms that can develop mechanisms for binding those toxins and transporting them out through the membrane, they enjoy an advantage over organisms that can't. Therefore, you see the development of chemicals that will react and select harmful material and transport it to somewhere where it can be excreted. So I don't see where the implacable obstacle is that can't be overcome through simple perturbation.
Well, I mean, it sounds like, and this is similar with populations, your argument is that we can only affirm and talk about evolution if you already have populations. But the problem with that view is populations, as you see them from the evolutionary view, are products of previous populations. So the thing I want the audience to notice is constant in my debates with evolution proponents is that they grant themselves fully functional operations of populations, not just the grand scale of the population itself, like a set of apes or a set of Pakicetus or wolves or anything else. Everything that's internally happening inside them, Tony grants that too. And I ask a simple question. He says, for things to be alive, they have to have all of these functions. By the way, if that's true, then there is a set of functions that were already there to begin with. That means that evolution didn't produce the functions. So under Tony's epistemology, he actually can't tell me whether or not the thing called the protoliver was always there or not from the start, like an eternal protoliver, or it was the process of random mutation. It actually produced itself into existence. This is why asking the question, well, what happened before that? They spurg out and they say, oh, we're talking about abiogenesis. Well, we're not really. We're just taking your own view, Tony. And if it's the case that populations, like a population of giraffes, that's a biological effect. That is something we see as a phenomenon. A collection of giraffes. That's a phenomenon we see. Under the evolutionary view, Tony, you have to say that that phenomenon called a population was produced by evolution. But the thing is, you can't. That's it. Like, you just can't do it.
Evolution only applies to populations, right? So the fatuous nonsense that we have to assume populations is nescient tendentiousness of the highest order.
You just admitted it.
I didn't interrupt you once while you were spewing your incredibly stupid nonsense.
Change your old man diaper.
Evolution deals with changes in population.
Okay, changes in populations. The thing is, a new population, is that not a change in something from a previous population?
I don't even properly understand the question.
Okay, a population.
Try phrasing it differently.
Okay, a population that exists is, from your view, from the evolutionary view, is divergent from an existing previous population, right?
Not in any measurable sense.
What? Okay, so listen. If you say Pakicetus exists and there's a divergent from the Pakicetus category through random mutation, the new population that's not identical to Pakicetus, is that not an expressed change in the current population?
Well, I mean, but but you're not. You're being imprecise in your terminology. So, for instance, tomorrow there will be a different there will be a different Homo sapien population on Earth than there is today. The people alive tomorrow will be different genetically and biologically than the one today. But they will not be measurably different.
What? That's a contradiction. They're different, but they're not measurably different?
Yes.
That's a contradiction, P and not P.
No, it isn't.
Then how do you know they're different if they're not measurably different, doofus?
So...
What the hell's wrong with your brain?
No. You're such an infant. It's fantastic. And you think you're qualified, to actually review scientific literature, and you're here presenting yourself, with your childish interpretation.
Okay, that's cool. Get back to the topic.
When I take two measurements of, for instance, distance, they can be different, but the difference may be below my ability to resolve. It's a matter of observational resolution.
Unbelievable. So populations that come forth from some diversion of an existing populations, you're saying aren't really different, but they are different.
No.
Oh my gosh, make up your mind.
It depends on the time scale over which change is allowed to accumulate.
Like say the whale is downstream from many, many generations of divergent from the Pakicetus. That's the claim, right? The Pakicetus eventually diverges in succession and produces eventually what's called a whale. You agree that the population called whale is not the same as the population called Pakicetus. Now, the point in me drawing out this distinction is to demonstrate that whatever you call a population is the actual phenomenon produced by evolution. It has to be. It's produced by evolution.
No. Whales are not a separate population from Pakicetus. That's the whole point.
I don't even grant that you have a viable scientific hypothesis, and I can actually prove it to you.
No, you can't.
Yeah, I can. Viable scientific hypothesis. That's a term in the scientific method, right?
You're trying to pretend that there is one scientific method?
How many are there?
There are a great many.
How many? Like as many genders?
I don't see what that throwaway bit of
it's funny because
nonsense is yes.
How many?
That you think that transphobia is funny.
How many?
Is entirely consistent.
How many scientific
there
methods?
Are many.
How many? That's
more than one.
How do you know that? Is there a classical one?
There is a very simplified one that is taught to high school students.
Does evolution make it through that one?
The parts of evolution that can be tested using experiment have been confirmed via experiment.
Look, dude, just answer the question and stop dodging.
I have answered the question.
Can evolution, the thing you're calling evolution, can it be taken through the grade school scientific method that we learn? So what's the observation? Simple. You just see something in the world, in nature. What is it?
We see a divergence of life forms, and we see that the divergence, we observe the divergence in real time.
Okay, cool. So you observe that. If that's the observation, what are you introducing and saying is causing that?
We're not introducing anything.
So you can't take it through the scientific method. I rest my case. Let's go to the next topic. Is a whale different than a Pakicetus?
It depends in what sense you're asking the question.
I'm asking from your view.
Cladistically?
Yes.
Are you asking this cladistically?
Yeah.
Are you asking genetically? Are you asking in terms of function?
So a whale is not the same species as a Pakicetus.
Right. But they're descendants, so they're incrementally acquiring new characteristics that will eventually, over time, accumulate into a significant change.
Great. Do you see that with bacteria?
Yes.
A bacteria eventually creates divergence where it actually leads to something that's not bacteria.
No, because
So fucking
again,
dude, this is insane.
so but E. coli, but you're talking so. So
If you say something came from something else in the ancient past, if it's not fossils in similarity and phenotype that you're determining something is in fact a past ancestor, what are you using to determine that?
well, you can use so we don't generally make those claims about anything. So I'm not certain I understand this question.
Wow. I'm going to ask you again. If there's something you find in the past, however you age it, if it's not anatomy that you're looking at similarity in its bone structure and phenotype, if it's not that you're determining that in fact is an ancestor of this thing today, what are you using as a methodology to determine it is?
We're not asserting that anything we found in the fossil record is necessarily an ancestor of modern humans or any other modern animal. I'm suggesting that it is a common ancestor, that it has common ancestry with us, which is to say that it is descended from a branch, and we are descended from the same branch, even though the point of divergence may have been further up the tree.
Okay, so at least with that one, you're looking at pure anatomy and coming to the conclusion of common ancestry.
I think actually, I'm not. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Okay, so the Ardipithecus, the thing you brought up, is not, you don't know if it's our ancestor, but it comes from something, maybe, that converges to whatever the ancestor is, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if that's a claim that there's an ancestor between the Ardipithecus and the human being, what is it you would use if you thought you found one? What methodology would you use to determine it was in fact an ancestor?
I am unaware of any methodology apart from genetic testing that would conclusively demonstrate that anything you find in the fossil record is necessarily an ancestor of modern humans.
Would you call that synonymous with unfalsifiable?
No.
Okay, why not?
Because you could
this is you know. And your claim that just because there are areas of uncertainty, therefore the entire thing is pseudoscience.
Well,
shut up.
You're so mad you lost the debate, dude.
You
lost, bro.
Just because there is uncertainty over whether or not a particular species in the fossil record is necessarily a direct ancestor of humans does not invite the conclusion that therefore evolution is a pseudoscience. Further, Jimbob's claim that it's not a scientific theory is absolutely absurd, and scientific institutions violently disagree with him, and him with literally no understanding even of what a clade consists of, let alone what orogeny is or any of the other
Oh my gosh!
I want to give you a chance to I'm just enjoying his idiocy at the moment, but I'll wind up in a second. And his inability to correctly compose or understand answers when he gets them. That he's going up against the scientific institutions. He's just wrong, and he's fucking lying.
We'll go back to Jimbob. I want to give Jimbob comparable time to respond.
Yeah, so everything you just said, nothing changes the fact that I just expose a massive problem in your view. The entire paradigm collapsed right in front of your face, which is why you got so mad and upset. And you should be mad and upset because that's your worldview collapsing in front of everybody's eyes. Now, the problem with your view is that evolution as a theory, which it's not because it didn't even make its way through the scientific method with you. You couldn't even walk you through the scientific method, dude. The problem with your view, Tony, is I just exposed that the entire view of evolution rests on this idea of common ancestry. And you, in front of all these people tonight, admitted that the particular aspect called common ancestry is unfalsifiable. Evolution is based on a model, and the model, inside the model, there's an assumption of common ancestry. And I just got you to admit that it's unfalsifiable. You can't actually use a methodology to determine common ancestry or not. And yet the entirety of the paradigm rests on this notion. You said in your opener or after the opener that the eye was a finished product. Now, is the eye a finished product?
No.
Okay. Could the eye be on its way to being a liver?
No.
Why not?
because the eye possesses none of the functions that would be necessary for it to become a liver.
Could it develop the sensitivities and functions to become a liver under a random mutation view?
I don't think that would be a meaningful. I don't even think that that's a meaningful question.
The question is whether or not the functions of the eye or the liver, right, because they develop from random mutation, you have to hold that they developed accidentally, right?
No.
Okay. So did they develop purposefully?
I would not suggest that. No.
Okay. So what's the in between between purpose, intentional toward functionality, and accidental? Is there a third option?
Yes.
What is it?
It's systematic. It's a system response it's a system response to external selection pressure.
Okay, system response. Are the responses accidental and random, or are they purposeful?
The question again.
Unbelievable, this guy.
Characterizes the system.
Dude, a system.
Systems don't have a.
Do systems? Tell me one system that's not functional.
Systems do not have purposes.
So is a system defined as something that's functioning?
It is defined as something that has a function.
Okay, can you define function without using the word purpose?
Yes.
Do it.
Okay. A function is a capacity to undertake certain tasks.
Oh, purposeful tasks? Are tasks purposes?
Not. Again, you are trying. Again, you are. Again,
all right,
you
move
are
on.
Trying, there is no purpose to this. Humans and other animals and other organisms are machines designed to replicate and to persist. That is their design. That's what they're designed for. Well, designed is what evolutionary pressure has driven us towards. I can see Jimbob's amusement at that. The idea of a purpose that implies some form of cognition. That something occurs on purpose implies some sort of intellectual process by which a need is identified and then that need is fulfilled.
Does your brain have a purpose? No. Yeah, exactly what I needed from you. Brains don't have purposes. Good job.